everyone. This is Molly and Sydney on our first podcast. It is called DerVaffle Dailies. Hope everyone is having a good day.
We have a special guest with us today.
Yes, we have the man who taught us a lot about film. And say hello to
The one, the only,
Jason Lee.
Say hi, Jason.
Oh, hello, everybody. Welcome to DerVaffle Dailies.
Yes.
Yes, and today we are starting our spooky month.
Spooky month.
Where we will be talking about horror films, probably some horror games. And we're going to start this off basically with old school and new school. I'm old school, Sydney's new school, and
Jason's like
in between.
Middle school.
Yeah.
And but first we wanted to kind of get started with what makes horror horror. Horror actually does rely on some trappings, tropes that really make us feel something in a scary or visceral way. These are isolation, claustrophobia. The protagonist is often a loner or outside of what society considers a normal person. And then you have the sense of other, be it a monster, be it a serial killer, be it an alien. If Jason can think of one that I am missing, please let me know.
I don't know. I mean, essentially a force beyond your control. Could be like Mother Nature of all things.
That's
Yeah.
true.
And sometimes it pops up in, movies that you wouldn't expect it in, like the movie The Martian actually used some horror tropes.
Yeah.
So with these in mind, that is why horror is able to hit us at a psychological level, or even something as cheap as a jump scare that makes us spill our popcorn all over the floor.
I've had that happen before, actually. I was at a movie theater, and I don't even consider it was like a horror film. It was the movie Taken. It was not a horror film at all, but it definitely gave me a scare. Probably because when I watched it, I was young. So
A young white woman watching a film about a young white woman getting kidnapped.
yes, Jason.
Definitely scary. Definitely scary. But not totally unreal. Not totally unreal, unfortunately. That seems to be an actual thing. Kids just getting kidnapped.
All right.
Yeah.
So with, basically these trappings and these tropes in mind, there are a lot of great horror movies out there, and I am going to run more towards old school in this, but a lot of good modern horror movies as well. And when we take film versus digital, as we're talking about, both have advantages and both have disadvantages. I'm not going to get into the argument of which is better. I will say that film is more expensive to shoot in.
But it also has its own pros and cons to it.
Right.
Yes.
So, I mean, to me, one of the reasons why I do like films and horror movies, it does go back to the B-movie days, where they would often get like cheaper film, and it would have scratches, it would have like warping to it and this sort of thing,
because we're actually talking, for people that don't know, we're actually talking about real film, that because older cameras had actual film that you purchased and that you actually processed through the camera, whereas digital, it's all
it's numbers.
Yeah, it's like analog versus digital in a sense, if that kind of helps.
It is that.
Yeah. it's precisely that. But a quick breakdown is that film actually is silver, and it's kind of like the old cameras, you know, that you would have to take the film to get developed. When you take a picture, these images are trapped in silver, and then when it's developed, they wash the silver not needed away, and that's what leaves the image. So
it's also what you would call negatives.
Yeah, negatives. And that is one of the advantages of film, is that the glass plates, you know, it could have been a picture made 150 years ago and on these glass plates, and you can still pull that image from it. So in some way, film is forever.
Yeah, there's a benefit to that.
You know, film is kind of magic. It uses silver. But that being said, is you have to take care of film. And if you use digital, you're going to get immediate feedback on what you have just shot. If you shoot in film, you have to get that developed, and you're not really going to know what you've done until you get that back.
So, for example, what Molly's talking about is if you take your phone, or say you do have an actual digital camera with you, you'll record on it, and then you'll be able to press a button and go into your picture profile and go through all the videos or the pictures that you've just taken, and you'll, like what she said, have immediate feedback. Whereas film, you would just have to take it, and then you would have to go develop it, and then see where you went wrong.
Yeah.
And that it's a whole other process. So it definitely kind of shows the differences there, because when I learned how to do older style film, to me it felt, because I was used to like the digital age, what I was used to was having that immediate feedback. So having to think a lot harder about
what you were
beforehand and what you were prepping for was a lot harder than it was with the digital, because I had to relearn how to prep for things as someone who was like getting used to older style film.
Yeah. And I think, you know, film, you don't have the cost just to be able to, like, well, let's experiment with this, let's experiment with that, because, you know, it costs more money. So I believe that you have to know this is exactly what we want to shoot. So you do have to be more on top of it.
Yeah, you do. Otherwise, you
can't reset.
Yes,
you
can't
have
reset.
To cut.
Yeah. And you also cost the studio money, so to speak,
if you don't know exactly what you're shooting.
Yeah.
You know, but
so that's some of the benefits and the cons of old film, is like there's a lot more to older style film, and just film itself, like having to take care of it a lot more, having to prep for things more, but it's so worth it. All that work is worth it once you get the final product, because wasn't I guess a good example would be Carol. Was it Carol
16
shot
millimeter.
on film?
16 millimeter.
Yeah. So the benefits of Carol is the general hue of it.
The warmth.
I guess you could also say the softness as well of some of the features on people.
Right, because I mean, in digital, to get that look, you are talking about filters, and you are talking about magical making editors that can take the crisp of digital and turn it into that old movie style. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, JP, they still haven't really gotten it there yet, as far as, you know, getting it to look exactly the same.
No, they probably never will. Film is a unique medium. It is both sharp and soft at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's not something digital can replicate. You're talking about something organic. Film is organic. So it never looks the same, no matter what you're doing.
All right. And so One other quick thing that I will say about the difference between film and digital is with film, the editing process.
Yes.
Because when you're working with film, you're going through these strips, these negatives, and you're cutting with, scissors and you're splicing it back together. Whereas digital, you can just upload and you can put it through an editor and you can go to work.
It's the whole thing of prepping again, like what you're going to cut, and you're being like more accurate with your actions than you are with digital. Because with digital, you can try something out, and if it doesn't work, you can unedit it.
Mm.
Whereas film, it's like when you make that cut's there.
That cut's eternal.
That cut is eternal. Another benefit too with one of the old films is being able to draw on the film.
Mm.
That's what I kind of like too, with some of the older, like real old style films. What were you gonna say, Jason?
Oh, I was gonna say that's why editing in terms of shot duration, now versus then, it's much lower. Horror films in general tend to be slower in terms of cuts, but just in general, older films are cut more deliberately because when you had to make a cut, it entailed a whole lot of work.
Yes.
And now that you're using digital NLEs, cuts are faster because, well, they're just easier to make. And that's why you get music video type films cutting every 3-4 seconds, because you can. It doesn't require a lot of work.
True.
And that does, now lead us to old school versus new school horror movies.
Molly's favorite part she's been trying to get to.
Yes. Jason did bring, the good point of the speed. Older horror movies do tend to be slower. And they do seem in a lot of ways to rely more on suspenseful elements than some of the newer horror movies. Just because of that, it's like the slow zombie versus the fast zombie fight.
Right.
To me, I still find the slow zombies scarier. But
I guess a good like in between would be like Zombieland, because they can walk and they can run.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you feel about that?
I mean, those are okay, but it depends on what type of fear reaction you want to get out of me. If you want that slow building dread,
right?
The slow zombies every time, because the reason why they're scary is it's not because there's just one, because it is that thing. If you watch, a lot of the older zombie movies where you see one, you look down, you look up, there's 10, the character looks down, you look back up, there's 100, there's 1,000, there's 1,000,000.
Right.
And they're all slowly surrounding you. And sooner or later, they're going to get to you. Whereas if a zombie like shambles and then runs up and bites me, you're going to get a more jump scare versus a slow building dread out of me.
So how would you feel about a popular game? I don't know if I'm going to get flack for saying this, but a popular game that is kind of based off of zombie-like tropes is The Last of Us.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you consider that suspense to be?
To me, the reason why The Last of Us is scary is more the cordyceps monster, and more what people do to each other.
Well, I meant more like as far as building suspense with zombies, because like with it being a video game, it's like they have to build it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you've
had
any idea about.
to me, I guess the suspense is, when are you going to run into them? Is this building going to have cordyceps monsters, or is this building not? And you're just walking along, and then one goes, and you're like, ah!
Yeah. Like,
so it tends to be more jump scare to me.
okay, I guess a good build for me that I can think of on that game was when they were going out to look for two people that went missing, and they were clearing out a house that had the monsters in it, and they were going through one of the crevices, and they were trying to be quiet, and like it just kept going and going, and like this whole like quiet suspense was building, and then it just all of a sudden you just get smashed into the like something gets smashed through the wall, and it grabs you. So I was like, I thought that was really good suspense building as far as like a video game goes.
It was good. It was good suspense that ended in a jump scare.
There you go. Suspense into a jump scare.
I don't know. What's your take on that, Jason?
Well, I didn't play The Last of Us. I only heard things about it, so I can't really speak to that.
Well, then how about the movies?
The films?
Yeah, the films.
Well, I don't know. I mean, just going back to the original Chainsaw Massacre. I know when I first saw that as a kid,
Horrifying.
yeah, it was horrifying because it looked so real. And you know, I was too young to understand why. It was when I got versed in film that I realized, you know, some of the things that they were doing to make it look real. And at the time, you know, when you had you didn't have a home video camera, you had a home film camera, and you would use 8mm or 16mm for, you know, your to film your family events. And that's exactly what Chainsaw Massacre did. They used ends of 16mm film, and that's why it looked a whole lot like, you know, a home film / video. The aesthetic, and you know, obviously that got brought back to modern day with the Paranormal Activity films.
Yeah.
Where they used sort of, you know, digital video and security camera footage.
Well, I know one movie. I don't know if it was Paranormal Activity. I think it was like House at the End, or like Amityville Horror. I think they did a remake of it, and they had some bits of it filmed on analog because one of the kids in the movie was documenting what was happening. So sometimes it would show what he was documenting, and I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. No, that's a great tool.
Yeah. I also know that Molly doesn't like this movie, but Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
The new one that they used that same style where it's like they shot it in kind of like a POV perspective almost.
Yeah, are you talking about the black and white one?
Yeah.
No, the new one.
The
There's
original.
a new one?
Yeah,
they remade Blair Witch.
What?
Yes. And don't even get me started on that one because, all right. But let me preface it by saying is that I do find the original Blair Witch. I have not seen the remake, but the original Blair Witch was inventive and it was new. And it did a lot of interesting things for the medium of film. I did not. I mean, honestly, to me, it was the characters and it was the stupidity that the characters did, and I wanted them to die. So that is the reason why Blair Witch did not really hit with me. And the fact that when I actually watched it in a movie theater, I got seasick. I got motion sickness, and I don't get motion sickness in real life.
The only movie that made me motion sick that I watched in theater was actually Hunger Games, the very first Hunger Games movie. I don't know the way that they decided to shoot some of the parts. It was just so shaky.
you know.
But yeah, I know what you're talking about, Molly.
Right. But you know, again, because I think they were just using like camcorders for the Blair Witch, I believe.
There might have been a combination of like early digital video, but they certainly
Right.
used some film as well.
Mm. And because I mean, I think that was the split between film and digital was, you know, because it went from like the 8 millimeters and the 16 millimeter to the family camcorder. You know, and because I'm wanting to say that, oh, what is his name? Tim Burton. He actually filmed some stuff early on with a camcorder, I believe.
Tim Burton did?
I thought he did.
I wouldn't know, actually.
Well, I thought he'd tried the medium before, but I mean, I could be wrong on that because for some reason I thought, was it Frankenweenie?
That's in stop motion.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the original, the live action.
Oh wow, I have no reference for that.
No, I don't either.
Oh, okay. Never
Oops.
mind. Yeah, it was originally done as a live action where Sparky was like an actual beagle and everything like that. It's worth a watch if you like Tim Burton. But it had the same Noah Hathaway, the same kid that was in the Neverending Story was in the live action Frankenweenie.
Oh wow.
I'll have to look that up.
Atreyu?
Yeah. Or no, Bastian.
Oh, Bastian.
Yep. I think yeah, because Noah was the one that played Atreyu. Sorry.
Yeah.
But no, it was the kid that played Bastian. But and we have went off on a tangent. We really have. But I mean, Frankenweenie.
It's been a fun tangent.
Frankenweenie is kind of maybe horror.
Well, I would say so. I mean, if you want to talk about different genres of horror, that would definitely be more of like, I guess, I don't know. Could you consider it like a kid horror? Because there are films geared for children.
Well, look, you're talking
Or I
about
guess
bringing
spooky.
the dead dog back to life, so that's pretty much in the horror trope.
Yeah.
Right.
So
The
there's
undead.
there's Frankenweenie, there's Coraline,
Mhm.
there is oh, I don't know. A lot of people don't really consider Nightmare Before Christmas a horror film.
I mean, it's not. It has horror tropes.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, and with Frankenweenie, you know, you're also dealing with loss,
Yeah.
and everything like that, which, you know, loss kind of in some ways it goes along with some horror, you know, especially like psychological and stuff like that. I mean,
Well, I guess if we really need to categorize horror films, I guess we need to consider like what tropes and what things are required for a film to be considered horror, right?
right, and that's when you go back to your trappings: isolation, claustrophobia.
A lot of bad stuff happens in the dark.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unseen enemies,
Atmosphere as well.
atmosphere, because horror usually relies on darkness and fog, a
Yeah.
lot of fog.
Because the scariest thing is not knowing what the enemy is.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is one of the things, like the original Alien.
Oh man, Alien Isolation, the game.
Yes.
It's so good. Like I would actually consider that either psychological or survival, probably both,
It is both.
because it's so good. Like I don't normally like I'm sure a lot of people know this about me already, especially if you follow the channel, but I'm not big into horror stuff. But I really, really enjoy like the psychological and like the survival horror type of stuff, because it's more engaging to me than it is with slasher films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a way.
Well, to me, I can laugh at some slasher films, but slasher films in a lot of ways is forgettable to me. It's the one that hits on a visceral psychological level, the ones that stays with me. Um, because I mean, yeah, you can say Saw is a slasher fic,
Yeah.
but it kind of works your way into your brain.
See, that one is Saw. The movie Saw is kind of like teetering almost. I would consider them both psychological survival, and I guess you could consider it slasher. I don't really consider it slasher because it's more survival.
It's more gore.
It has more gore, yeah, but it's not like someone's actively going out to slash you. You know what I mean?
Mm. Yes, they just put you in the situation in which you can be slashed.
They put you in the situation. So it's one of those things where it's like it's one of those where you have to consider what kind of tropes.
What are you willing to do in order to survive?
Yes.
What other people do to other people, which Molly brought up earlier, which ends up being very scary too.
Yes.
You know, because I mean, for a fast zombie film, that is why 28 Days Later kind of hit me on that level, and a lot of it was what people do to other people. And I think ultimately that is kind of a zombie thing to look at because, you know, yeah, during the initial thing, zombies are scary. They're trying to eat your brains and everything like that.
Yeah.
But I think even what you would see in like Romero films, and oh gosh, the TV show just The Walking Dead is after that initial zombie push, it really does turn into what do people do to other people, and zombies just kind of become, oh yeah, I've got to watch out for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that is one of the reasons for horror is because in a lot of ways it says the monster is ourselves.
Interesting take.
You know, in a lot of ways we are the monster.
Another film that you kind of say is the same way is Starship Troopers.
Yes. And it's more sci-fi than horror.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying,
but
for the thought process of like you realize that you're the villain in it.
You're rooting for the villains
Yeah.
in Starship Troopers
Because you realize that the human race is the villain, not the
bugs. And,
So-
and in fact, I think me and Jason had an interesting conversation in that in school.
About?
Starship Troopers gets you to root for the villains.
As you get older, you start recognizing that.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in my late teens, early 20s, whenever it was, yeah, I was certainly rooting for the humans, but I didn't understand what I was watching.
Mm-hmm. And so that is one of the things that, even though Starship Trooper is sci-fi, horror actually in a lot of ways is kind of a mirror to say the monster is us. You know, we are the monsters. Society is the monster. And I think that, you know, that is one of the reasons also why horror is scary. Because nobody wants to think that they are the villains.
Yeah, it's very true. No one wants to see themselves as a villain. They always say, even the villain thinks of themselves as the hero.
Yes, everyone thinks that they're in their own movie. Like every person on this planet thinks that they are the main character of their own film, and they always think that they're the hero in some regard.
Yeah, and we know that's not true. And sometimes, you know, it was really when the pandemic first began. It was a little scary seeing how some people were reacting, hoarding canned goods, hoarding toilet paper, and I'm just like,
Toilet paper of all things.
Yeah, so you could survive an
extra bit longer, like none of this is going to work unless we work together.
Yeah.
But people were just looking out for themselves, and it was just like, yeah, that's where these, Walking Dead things occur.
Mm-hmm.
And because I will tell you, I was working at an Office Depot during the pandemic. I was considered essential, and this woman come in and she bought like a $500 printer, and we happened to have a pack of toilet paper in the store that day, and a pack of toilet paper, and she literally didn't have room. Her trunk was not large enough for the printer. But
What kind of truck did she have?
well, what kind of printer? It was like one of those like
Oh,
$400 or
was it-
$500 printers.
Oh,
that
was it like a standing printer?
right? It was like and everything
okay.
like that, and she just put the printer in the back seat, not even worried about it. But she was scared that somebody would break out her windows for that pack of toilet paper.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, she wasn't wrong. Like, I actually, like, the other day, and like this is already like a year through the pandemic. Like the other day, I was in the parking lot at like a Target, and I had a bag or like a box of disposable masks, and I had them sitting there in my chair, like my passenger seat. And I was thinking, like, as I was about to get out, I was like, should I hide these and put them like under the seat? Is someone gonna like try and get into my car? And then I was like, oh wait, we're in the South, no one gives two shits. So I mean, but it's just one of those things where I even had a thought of like, is someone gonna get into my car and like take my mask, if I just leave them here in the open? So yeah.
And I mean, to me, it's one of the interesting things is how much stuff was actually recorded during this pandemic and how much ugliness has happened in the last 18 months, 2 years. I mean,
it almost kind of feels like for years we all played at being a nice civil society, and
Yes.
then it takes one problem to shock the whole world, and then all of the vicious teeth come out.
right.
It's kind of what it feels like.
Right. And then you have so many people recording stuff on their phones now. I mean, are we going to look back on this in 20 years watching this footage and think of it as a horror movie? I mean,
I would, especially with the amount of people actually having mental problems.
yeah, the pandemic has not been good for people who have mental issues.
It's been growing. People have been getting a lot more anxiety, being paranoid. People are having a lot of issues as far as like that goes on like the mental health side of it.
Right. And that is one of the big things in horror films is the psycho killer, the serial killer, the person who, like, I mean, Michael Myers has been doing it now for years. And what was that, Jason?
He's been doing it for decades.
Yeah, he's been doing it for decades. And that is one of the thing, I mean, that really kind of in some ways gets me in horror. And now maybe not Michael Myers. I do tend more, that's more towards slasher to me. But I mean, when you are looking at the Buffalo Bills, and you are looking at what made Buffalo Bill, and you kind of get in Silence of the Lambs, you kind of get a reason why, but you don't. But there is something to be said about the psychological horror, because I do look around now sometimes and I wonder if I'm in a living psychological horror movie. I mean,
it feels like that recently, at least.
Hey, you bring up a great subgenre of horror, the psychological horror. There's some good modern ones out there right now. Mindhunter
Mm-hmm.
on Netflix, David Fincher's
Mm-hmm.
TV show.
Mm-hmm.
That thing is, well, True Detective as well.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those certainly tread in that Buffalo Bill, Hannibal Lecter type
Mm-hmm.
world.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's just, this stuff is terrifying to think there are people out there like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't always have to be Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees or Freddy Krueger. Psychological horror can go a long way because you're imagining how bad this stuff is.
Mm-hmm. And Panic Room.
Yeah.
You know, that whole idea of this is supposed to keep me safe, however, it's keeping me trapped.
Yeah. The whole it literally shows the mental side of things, like how much you can imagine your own horror.
Mm-hmm. Right. And again, it also deals with the isolation. But you're, I don't know, it's kind of like strange because you're isolated, but it's almost like the isolation is of your own design that's supposed to protect you, and yet it's not. I think in some ways the Purge movies do that as well.
Okay.
Although I'm not sure they're classically. I think it's horror, but I think there may be other other genres that go into the Purge movies and stuff like that. But yeah, the Purge movies is one day a year, anybody can kill you, and you're running, and in the first one, it's a wealthy family trapped inside their house. But
the Purge movies were an interesting concept too, because it's like, well, what if we did have one day where anything was legal? It's just one of those things where it's like, I'm glad that we don't have anything like that in real life, but it definitely is food for thought kind of a thing.
Right.
I feel like it's one of those kind of movies.
Yeah. Which, I think, talking about the great horror movies that we've talked about, the modern ones and the older ones, I think one of the things is that horror movies, a lot of them started as B class, as I've said. More of them have.
So I'm sorry. I'm so sorry to stop your thought, but just so that way people know who aren't really familiar with films, what is an A film versus a B film?
Well, it started back when there was double features. You had the A film and then you had the B film. The B film was usually, it was more like a serial. It was usually not as much money put into it.
Lower production values.
Yeah.
Lower production values.
It didn't have like A-list celebrities.
A lot of them, no. Although a lot of B class actors became celebrities in their own right.
Yeah.
I mean, Rutger Hauer started in B class and was a B class hero. But yeah, it's usually lower production values. So they had to make do with a lot of stuff that the A.
So, for example, could you say like what an A film would be and what a B film would be?
Okay, a good example is trying to stay in the horror genre. Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things would be a B class, which is an actual movie. Like They Saved Hitler Brain. It does tend more towards the shock, whereas actually later Nightmares on Elm Streets, they were an A movie.
Yeah.
They got much more budget value than a lot of the other horror movies at the time, like, you know, Fright Night. So, but yeah, B class tended, I think, to somewhat die.
Well, I think
As
in
a thing
today's
with
age,
digital.
the idea of an A class and a B class film has kind of died, but the concept is still kind of there.
Right. B class now is going to be more of your independent.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's going to be your direct to TV, or maybe even direct to streaming. It depends, but the production value is even on, we'll say air quotes, B class horror films or B class films in general. It's still a step above than B class from 20-30 years ago.
Yes.
Right. Like one of my favorite B class films ever is The Blood of Heroes. It was filmed in 1990, 1991, and I think that it was filmed for less than $2 million. And I think the average B class or A class movie probably got what, 20-30 million at that time period. So
Yeah.
And that is why horror, as we were saying, horror is a good leap into filmmaking, because if you watch the original, oh my goodness, the name of the movie just escaped me. Oh my goodness, it had the Necronomicon in it, and it was Sam Raimi.
Knights of Badassdom?
No, Sam Raimi. Basically the horror movie is when they were in college and they's like, you know what? Let's go to this cabin in the woods, get drunk, and make a horror movie. And The Evil Dead. There we go. I knew I would get it.
Evil Dead. Yeah, I was like, what?
What movie is this?
I mean, you know, that was just a bunch of bros getting together, drinking beer, and deciding to make a horror movie.
Yeah.
I mean, so, you know, I would say if anybody did want to try to make a movie, short, anything like that, horror would be one of the easiest, because of it doesn't require a big massive set if done correctly. You can do it on one location. You could do it with 3 or 4 actors and somebody to run a camera. You know, I think that it is still one of the good gateway genres into filmmaking.
Yeah.
So, all right, Jason, what's your favorite horror movie?
Oh man, my favorite horror movie, probably the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Man, I watched that when I was really young, probably less than 10 years old. I lose track.
Yeah, it would be less than 10.
Yeah, there's no way I should have been able to watch that as a kid. Yeah. So, but definitely scarred me. But you know, as I got more involved in film and got older, I was able to recognize a lot of the qualities of the film that made it so scary, that made it so memorable, even if traumatic. You know, outside of that, Friday the 13th never really resonated with me.
Me neither, really.
Yeah, and Halloween, obviously, Exorcist, and those are obviously older sort of horror films, and the more modern horror film, which, gosh, may not even be that modern anymore, is the Scream series, which really rejuvenated the horror genre, made it profitable again. Because, you know, every genre goes through its ups and downs, and in the early to mid 90s, horror was petering out until Wes Craven, right?
Yeah,
Wes Craven brought Scream back and really turned all the genre tropes on its head.
Well, Scream came back before they started doing Stranger Things, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I think Scream and then Stranger Things kind of really brought horror more up close to, or not,
Yeah,
like,
because
brought it back, I think, into more mainstream.
I believe Scream was what, 2001, 2002, somewhere around in there.
Let's see here. The original Scream was 1996.
1996.
My God.
Yeah.
I graduated high school.
I was 26 years old.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I mean, I think American horror did take a downturn there somewhere in the 90s. And, you know, I think you're right. Wes Craven with Scream kind of brought it back. But I think also that we have to, you know, give some credit to the Asian horror cinema, like the Japanese horror films.
Yes.
Coming over and actually rejuvenating, because I will tell you,
like The Ring,
and The Grudge,
Parasite,
and because I will tell you that I was not ever scared or disturbed while watching The Ring, but after it, I didn't want to go into a dark room.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's how you know it worked.
It definitely hit me on an unconscious level.
Yeah.
You know, and which I found interesting because, you know, you can say something's disturbing and everything like that, but when you don't even realize that a movie is affecting you, now that's a good movie.
It's a good movie.
You know? But so yeah, I mean, I do think that, you know, that is an interesting thing from horror, because we've pretty much been looking at it from an American horror point of view, but there is literally a world of horror out there. And, you know,
I'm actually surprised at how it's changed over the years, because American horror used to just be slasher, but now, since that's kind of like gone on the wayside a little bit, it's kind of changed a little bit with like the newer horror that's coming out. It's not necessarily slasher anymore, which is good, in my opinion.
And some of them you have a mix, and then some of them, to me, that I find horror, other people do not find horror, because I mean, there is a reason why I will not read or watch The Hunger Games. I don't need that in my head. So on some level, to me, The Hunger Games is horror.
Same as like Maze Runner, or even there's a new show on Netflix called Squid Games.
Squid Game.
Mm-hmm. And it would be kind of survival psychological type of thing, because that's what Hunger Games was. It was survival psychological as well.
Right.
Yeah, it's that thing. What are you willing to do in order to survive? I mean, that shit is just scary.
Right. I mean, you know, so you know, a lot of people's like saying, well, The Hunger Games isn't, you know, horror. Squid Game isn't horror. I was like, all gladiatorial combat to me is horror. I mean,
it also goes back to the whole
for entertainment.
It also goes back to the idea of the common person understanding what horror is, because that's where I feel like a lot of a miscommunication is with horror genre, is what American audiences want for horror and what they believe horror is a lot of slasher and like a monster. That's what they believe horror is. But when you look at other types of horror, it's like there's a lot more to it than just slasher and blood, you know? But I feel like that's where there's like this whole disconnect on American audiences.
Well, it's just to me that slasher is actually the least funny, or the least horrific and most funny to me. One of the reasons why I like Nightmare on Elm Street is because it's funny, and Freddy Krueger is horribly sarcastic and an asshole that I laugh at.
Yeah, he certainly became that way over the lifespan of those films. But in the first one, he's just scary as hell.
The first one, he is scary as hell. And you know, that is the first place I ever saw Johnny Depp.
Yes.
Was in that movie, and that whole bed scene that still gets me.
Oh, which one? Because there's kind of like two. There's the one on the wall.
Mm,
The young girl
right.
gets slashed up on the wall, on the ceiling.
Gross.
And then there's no Johnny Depp scene is the blood shooting out of the bed, right?
Yes.
Jesus.
Yeah, the blood guys are out of the bed. Although to me the scariest scene in the first one is the practical effect, and probably still one of the best practical special effects still done. I think they still kind of use it, is where he's pressing out of the wall over Nancy.
Yes. Yeah, they still use that trick, like the latex.
Yes, the latex.
Yeah.
And I mean, that to me creeped me out more than pretty much anything else. But yeah, the first one was scary, but I think in some ways maybe that's all with all series, sequel films, horror films, is it just starts getting more and more silly.
Yes.
And more schlocky.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, at that point, it just becomes entertainment. It's no longer scary.
Mm-hmm.
One of the horror films that actually freaked me out the most, I believe, was Insidious. Because it was where the character had the ability to leave his body and go through the what is it called? Something plane. Astral plane?
The
Astral plane?
Astral plane. And, spirits could then inhabit his body since he left his. And that was like the whole idea with Insidious, is that, the kid survived, but then the dad ended up being taken over by an evil spirit.
Which is the sense of other. And everything like that.
That one scared me the most. Like, horror films that scare me the most are the ones that you can't do anything about, which is the paranormal. I cannot handle those films at all. I don't know. I guess it is where my explanation would be, like I said before, is like, I feel like you can't do anything when it comes to the paranormal. I feel like you're just fucked at that sense. Whereas like any other horror, it's like you have a chance to survive. Whereas I feel like with paranormal, I don't feel like I would.
Well,
and that's what makes them scary. Again, it's that idea that you can't control something.
And a lot of the paranormal things, like, never watch The Entity, because anytime that you're getting attacked by something you can't see on top of it, so there is this whole unknown. It's not, you can't control it, and whatever's attacking you, you can't see it.
I have a big fear of the unknown when it comes to stuff like that.
Which I think is when you played, what is it? Phasmophobia or whatever.
Yeah, when we were playing Phasmophobia, the game.
That is why it kind of freaked you out so bad, is because you have a game that's interacting with your voice and you can't really see it except out of the corner of your eye. And then when you do see it, you're dead.
I even played a game called Face Your Fears, which is a VR experiment game where you could test out your VR kind of a thing. And one of the Face Your Fears was, a ghost experience. And I was like, why not? I'll try it. Here we go. And so I was laying there in bed, and then a child is standing there at the foot of your bed, just staring at you. And I'm just like, crap. Of course, it had to be a fucking kid. A demon child. And then it started like changing positions and like getting into like it kept progressively getting scarier and scarier. And then it got to the point where I literally just threw off the VR set, and I was like, nope, nuh-uh, can't do it.
Well, I will tell you, to me, the concept of children in horror movies is some of the worst. I mean, children are scary.
The spooky kid trope.
The spooky kid trope, the Stepford children, the Children of the Corn.
Well, what gets me too is like in horror films where you have people just stare at you with a blank stare. I think that also freaks me out the most because we adopted a dog. Her name is Momo, and she's the sweetest thing. But when we first got her that first night, I swear to God, to whatever like being owns this planet or what universe energy there is, I swear I was laying in bed, this dog stared at me blankly, didn't blink, did not blink at all, and she just was staring at me, and I was like trying to go to bed, and I was like, this is how I die. I'm gonna die tonight by the hands of this dog. She just kept staring at me, and I was like, what do you want? Didn't even blink, didn't move, didn't like react to anything that I was saying to her. I was like, what? Like, you've been possessed.
Cujo. Although Cujo had rabies, to be completely honest.
Yeah, but now that I've gotten, like, I've spent time with her and I've gotten to know her better, it doesn't bother me as much anymore.
All right. Well, we are getting to the end of our time.
Are we?
Yeah, it's 56 minutes and you have a meeting at noon.
I mean, it's just lunch. It's fine. Anyway, so we're getting to the end.
Yes.
Was there any like last minute things that we wanted to talk about on this topic?
I would say one thing is going back to film and digital formats.
Mm-hmm.
Film does degrade over time, but I think in the genre of horror that actually might work in its favor.
Yeah.
Yes, it does work in its favor. Again, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Mm-hmm. and digital.
I feel like you have to add a lot to it to give it that feeling that atmosphere that you're looking for.
Right. Digital. One of the things about it is when you get it filmed and when you get it edited, that's what you have.
Mm-hmm.
And technically, it can last forever as long as you have backups, as long as it doesn't, wherever you have it stored, doesn't become like hard drives and stuff like that. They do deteriorate, so it is going to be a constant backup process to keep your digital. And as long as you have electricity to keep it going. Digital does require some form of electricity.
Yeah. Which hopefully we won't have to say goodbye to electricity anytime soon.
But, yeah, but digital has a lot of pros. It's definitely cheaper and it does not degrade as long as you can keep it backed up.
I will also say it is easier to work with. Digital
Yes.
is. However, since it is easy to work with, it is also easy to mess it up.
Exactly.
So,
And that actually matters too.
mm-hmm.
So, in the overall scheme of film versus digital, the argument was always made that digital makes people less professional. And that's only true when the people you're dealing with are already unprofessional.
Yeah. Like film students, right, JP?
Yeah. It can be. It can be. You got to hold yourself to a high degree of professionalism, whether you're shooting film and or digital. But it becomes more real when you're shooting film because you can hear it running through the camera.
Yes.
And if you're not on your A game, you're wasting something.
Yes.
And so to that degree, that's why, certain filmmakers like to shoot film. They feel it keeps people on their toes and on their A game at all times.
Which isn't a bad thing, but I can see how it would cause people stress. But I mean, it goes back to the whole, like, what can you handle?
Right.
But anyway, like with digital being easier to mess up, I have learned that the hard way, and I know Molly has seen it happen, where it's like you have a perfectly good picture that you've already shot, and then you're trying to add stuff to it to create this other effect that you're wanting in post, and then you work on it for so long, and then you take a break from it, you watch it again, and then you look at it and you're like, what the cheesy fuck happened here?
You made it worse.
You made
Right.
it worse.
And which also is another thing, film versus digital is film you can double expose. Digital,
Oh, you want to tell them about that exposure incident that happened at school?
no.
Why is it going to make you cry?
You know, a lot of, if you're working with digital, anything extra that's added in is added in by an editor.
Mhm.
You know, there now in film, it's probably, you know, in actual filmmaking, it's probably harder to double expose, but like in photography and stuff like that, you can double expose with film.
Yes.
Digital, yeah, anything extra, it does have to be added in. Because I remember when I was a kid, we would always have the pictures, the school pictures of us sitting there, and then in a profile, we'll have that ghostly image of us and everything. Like, yeah, I can't really do that with digital unless you edit it that way.
Very true.
Mhm.
So, all right, guys. Well, thank you, Jason, for
Thank you all. This was fun. Let's
This was a
do
lot
it
of
again,
fun.
and let's try to get some video on this.
Yes.
let's and
We'll have video for Molly and me, but poor Jason. This was a test. Sorry.
Oh no, that's fine. That's fine.
it's a good test. So next time we can have video so everybody can be seen.
Yes. And I don't think we actually told. Did we actually tell the audience like what his film lineage is?
Um,
Film lineage.
if
The
he
film lineage.
if he chooses to tell that, then he can.
Okay.
Yeah, well, you know, former professor of film at the University of blank,
Of blank.
7 years, tenured professor. Thank you very much.
He was our film professor. He taught us a
Yeah.
lot in the film avenue.
He taught us.
Worked in
Oh, go ahead.
worked in industry.
Yes.
Actual sets.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I didn't just make my own shit. I actually worked in industry.
Mm-hmm.
Worked with Clint Eastwood.
Mhm.
Worked with Michael Mann. On set. Took direct instruction from them. It wasn't like I was just out on the periphery.
Mm-hmm.
Edited for the Society of Camera Operators, which they, I believe, are supporting the IATSE strike for Hollywood right now for all craftspeople. What else? Did some freelance work for a documentary called The Short Game, which was produced by Justin Timberlake about prodigy golfers, kids. Pretty interesting. But yeah. So definitely worked in industry, helping people, trying to become better filmmakers, and trying to give these students, when I get back into teaching, perhaps the secrets that these top universities are trying to keep to themselves.
And you went to one of those top universities, didn't you?
I did. Chapman University, which now can claim the Duffer Brothers, the creators of Stranger Things.
Yes.
And I forgot the gentleman's name, but he does Dear White People.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I believe the Fear Street ladies too, maybe alumni as well. Yeah, there's some other ones out there. Can't think of them at the moment,
But
yeah.
anyway, you went to a
top notch.
top-notch school.
Yeah, they are now ranked number 4 in the world. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
you guys got to go through some of that. I don't want to call it. You got some of the secrets, especially with intermediate
Yeah.
film production and cinematic language.
It definitely felt
as
like
well.
some of the classes we had with you were like not undergraduate level, they were like graduate level.
They were.
And we thank you for it, even if we
Yes.
were sucking our thumb and crying at the time.
Yeah, it was worth it.
It was worth it.
All right. Well, with all that said, thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Jason, for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. And next week, Molly, you want to tell them what we're talking about?
Yep. Next week is the differences in old horror films versus new horror films, where we do more of an in-depth
yeah.
of
Like kind of like the CGI special effects type of stuff is what we're going to be talking about.
right, the practical versus the computer generated. And so
And all that fun stuff.
Oh yeah. And we hope to see you next week.
And have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.